In the Highlands of Scotland, a monstrous and demonic bear was told in legend to live within the Scottish forests for hundreds of years. And eventually this creature was seen and fought by the ferocious King Fergus, leading all to fear that bear. But what few knew was who that bear originally was. That bear was a prince, and today we're going to do one of my favorite activities and piece together his entire story. Hello, I'm Isaac from Wotso videos, where we discuss fun topics for fun people. On my channel I focus on spreading magic by examining Disney films, so if you are new here, consider subscribing. While the murderous, aggressive, and mysterious Mor'du became a well-known legend within the four clans, this name had not always been placed upon this entity. The words Mor and Du respectively translate in Gaelic to mean giant and black, meaning the title Mor'du likely was referring to the massive dark-haired creature that tormented the Scottish people. Or the name Mor'du could also refer to the French word for bitten, since the beast became famous for the limbs it would consume. Or it could refer to the Latin word for death, which was mortis, as Mor'du became synonymous with the destruction of life. The people declared the bear Mor'du when the creature seemed to emerge into the world from the shadows to feed upon men, women, and children alike, indicating this was not his original title of the man before the curse. To fully discover how Mor'du came into being and learn whose fate was corrupted, we must look back to a time many years ago, long before he was hunted down by the four clans, and long before he was ever even referred to as Mor'du. Mor'du's life prior to his transformation took place within a kingdom whose name has since been forgotten, long ago, where he lived as a royal only under his father the king. All adored the king, for his wisdom was said to be as plentiful as his love from his people. That king had four sons, who each possessed a characteristic that was respected. The youngest prince was wise, the third was compassionate, the second was just, and the eldest born prince, who would inevitably transform into a ferocious beast, was known to be strong. But soon enough, the firstborn would make a mistake. He would come to believe his strength to be tied with character, leading him to feel entitled, which would soon culminate into actions when a tragedy struck his life. One dark autumn, the noble king fell ill and declared on his deathbed a change that would rattle the foundation of the kingdom. The eldest son was no longer given the right to inherit the entirety of the realm, but instead the kingdom was split between the four sons, for their father believed that their combined gifts could create an even greater kingdom. They were meant to be the pillars for which the peace of the world rested upon. But when the king died and his final orders were meant to be enacted, the eldest son felt disgraced. He felt as though his birthright had been stripped away and what he deserved had been taken from him, which led to selfishness growing within him. This belief that he alone should be king grew within the eldest son until he inevitably declared his claim to the throne over his brothers, demanding his family's obedience and shattering the bonds he had with his brothers. Because of this betrayal, claims and alliances were drawn as each brother raised armies against the others, for the strongest brother's betrayal led them all to clamor for the seat of the throne, and from here they would go to war. Brother fought brother as war raged amongst the ancient kingdom, from land to forest to sea. The fate of the kingdom had been changed forever. No one brother had enough men or resources to conquer the other three though, leaving them all in a drawn-out lethal stalemate. And this situation would drive the eldest brother mad. Starving for victory over the kingdom, he sought after a mystical circle of stones, and from this place the man was led by will-o'-the-wisps to a dark lake where a cottage existed far beyond the shore, which is the home of a witch. When the eldest son met the conjurer and enchantress, he demanded that she create a spell for him that could alter his fate, so that he may dominate and finally defeat his brothers.
He demanded I give him the strength of 10 men, and he gave me this.
He offered her his signet ring, which was decorated with the crest of his family. Symbolically, the man who would become Mor'du was giving up his family ties to give into his need for power and to increase his strength. He had rejected his brothers, but now he was releasing his bonds with his family legacy and where he came from. He turned away from his true humanity, and the witch could see this broken heart. The witch agreed to serve the prince, but she did so in a way to give the man's wounded soul a chance to be redeemed. She created a potion for the man that could either be used to fulfill his dark wish or heal the bonds between his family. How the eldest son's life would progress was no longer in the hands of the witch. If he hoped to preserve the good within himself, he would need to do so for himself. But of course, he He'd already made the decision on where his fate would take him. The prince baited his brothers with a false truce, so when they met in their father's throne room, he once again declared himself the sole ruler and demanded their obedience. When his brothers defied him again though, he drank the spell, which immediately took effect. While it did provide the eldest brother with tenfold unholy strength, to his surprise, it also transformed him into a great black bear. The spell had corrupted his body, just as his heart had already done to his soul. So to undo this transformation, he would have needed to mend the bonds that he had torn apart. But the brother did not turn away from the magic, but embraced it. He accepted the form of the monster and slayed his brothers in cold blood. With his brothers eradicated, the lone brother returned to his armies to end the war, but his soldiers could only see a dreaded beast before them, so they turned on their leader. The people took up arms against the bear, and out of anger and rage the demonic bear began to slaughter the people, leading to many to flee the kingdom in terror. With the armies of the brothers fractured, the kingdom fell into darkness, and the blight of the great black Mor'du fell across his domain.
He followed his own path, and the kingdom fell to war and chaos and ruin.
But Mor'du, on the other hand, would not be as easily destroyed as the kingdom he had once hoped to rule. The eldest brother lingered as Mor'du in the shadows of the forest and destruction, living his extended life with his cursed fate. Only now, his humanity was all but erased. The mind of the eldest brother was now lost as he had become a true bear. The only aspects of the prince that remained were his anger, his strength, his instincts, and his need for dominance and destruction, making Mor'du a horrible beast within the world. Years turned into decades as the monstrous bear lived on and became legend, while the original four brothers' descendants and armies seemed to create four clans in the ashes of their once grand kingdom. The Dunbroch, the MacGuffin, the Macintosh, and the Dingwall clans all formed and clashed with one another, until Vikings, Romans, and northern invaders threatened them all. Together, the four clans worked together to defend their lands, and out of the chaos and victories, the four clans declared Fergus, the leader of Clan Dunbroch and a man who had faced Mor'du, as the king of the newly formed Kingdom of Dunbroch. Throughout King Fergus's life, he would witness the bear that tormented his land, culminating initially when Mor'du attacked his family. Seemingly guided by the will-o'-the-wisps, or maybe by an innate desire to end the lives of rulers of the land, Mor'du attempted to destroy Fergus's daughter Merida and his queen Eleanor. But Fergus fought the monster off with a group of guards, resulting in a battle that would be recounted for many years as the time where Mor'du consumed Fergus's leg. After this encounter, Mor'du would not be witnessed again for years, seemingly disappearing.
Mor'du has never been seen since, and is roaming the wilds, waiting his chance of revenge.
Mor'du would only rise from the darkness after another royal would tempt their fate. When Merida transforms her mother into a bear, Merida and Eleanor follow the wisps in hopes of discovering answers, which lead them to the ruins of the eldest son's old kingdom. It is here where Merida becomes the first individual to understand the connection between Mor'du and the ancient kingdom's destruction, that the prince was the one who was the demonic entity who brought his kingdom to its knees. The bear attacked Merida in the ruins of the old throne room, and Merida furiously attempted to hold back the creature. While none of her arrows could stop the monster though, she was able to escape with her mother at that time. But Mor'du would not end his hunt. The massive, seemingly indestructible black bear tracked down the people who had stood in his way and trespassed in his home. So when he finally found them, he violently approached. The soldiers under the command of King Fergus attempted to kill the bear, but Mor'du's power and might allowed him to cut through them and get to Merida. With her daughter in danger and by being in her bear form, Queen Eleanor attacked Mor'du to save Merida using her strength, resilience, and heart. And luckily, through the efforts of Eleanor to keep Mor'du at bay by continuously fighting him away, the monster was eventually stopped. The prince's body had finally been eradicated, which meant that Sun was finally able to separate himself from the monster he had transformed into. In the place where Mor'du fell, the spirit of the prince rose and appeared to thank those who had freed him. While he may have at one point chosen to embrace the violent and destructive ways of Mor'du, after losing control of who he was and being condemned to live within the body of a monster for generations, it appears He had been warned by the damage he had caused and was able to reflect on how many people's lives had been the cost of his desire to create a destiny where he would become king. His entire life and his entire legacy was surrounded by deaths, fear, and wars he had caused. But because of the efforts by Merida and her family, he could finally have peace now that he understood how wrong and horrible his life had become. The eldest prince of an ancient kingdom had become selfish, corrupt, and violent after believing his gift of strength and older age indicated he deserved the throne. With this belief, he started wars, betrayed his family, took on a curse, and allowed himself to become a monster that was capable of massacring his own people. Although eventually the prince would one day see, after generations of death and destruction, that his choices were wrong, for the majority of his life, he survived as a dark, legendary monster of death that was known as Mor'du. But now it's time to hear your thoughts. Do you think Mor'du's soul should have been able to be redeemed? Well, I do think for the most part people should be forgiven for their actions. I kind of find it's wild that the eldest son of a kingdom could slaughter so many people and then be freed of responsibility when they themselves died. Let me know what you think though in the comments, along with any other ideas you have for future videos. Also, to all of you fantastic fun people who are wonderfully supportive of my life, last week was filled with lots of big milestones. I graduated from college with a degree in mathematics and entrepreneurship, I turned 21, and I moved into my first non-dorm or parents' home apartment. There's a lot of fun transitions going on right now, and if you'd like to see and hear more about all of that, be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wotso Videos. Thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon who are amazing supporters of my videos, along with all of the fun people who have been assisting me on my long journey on YouTube and in life. And as always, thanks for watching and have a magical day.